Hi, guys. Welcome back to my podcast. This is Arun Gala, and my podcast is called Grabbing Coffee with Arun, where I talk to everyday people that are quite interesting. Today, my guest is Evan Mintz. He's opinion editor of the Chronicle. Evan, just to start off with, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So, just to kind of start off with, Evan, tell me a little bit about what you do at the Chronicle.
Sure. So I'm the editor for opinion community engagement at Houston Chronicle. And that means I oversee three parts of the paper. There are unsigned editorials that are supposed to represent the institutional voice of the paper. We
Hmm.
usually weigh in on local policy issues. Then we have the op-eds. Those are signed columns written by outside writers and some of our staffers here at the Chronicle. And then the letters to the editor. And those are the pieces that people write to us, mostly via email, in response to content that is run in the Houston Chronicle, saying whether they like it, they disliked it, what they thought about it overall.
So, how do you guys pick which ones are, interesting to publish?
For those letters, we try to see if there's some sort of pattern. If a lot of people are writing about a certain perspective, they all have the same point of view. We're going to try to
Hmm.
find whichever one we think is, best, maybe a couple of them, and get them in there. If we get a letter and it's just they're the only person saying it,
Hmm.
sometimes we might pass on that unless it's particularly compelling. Also, if things are in response to other opinion pieces rather than straight news, we want to go out of our way to provide that alternative view. If someone says, I like bike lanes, and we get some letters that say, I don't like bike lanes, like, well, we want to make sure we have that balance. And
Hmm.
also, if we get, interesting voices, elected officials, leaders in the community, also going out of our way to find young people who speak up. We think that's very important to make sure that folks who are trying to step into that science of civic engagement at a young age are that we can help lift up their voices.
Yeah, I was quite impressed with your resume, Evan. I know you have a law degree, right?
Yes, yeah. I went to the Cardozo School of Law in New York City, but I'm a lifelong Houstonian.
Hmm.
I thought it would be interesting to go up to New York and see what it'd be like to live there. New York is a great place when you have a lot of time and money. And as a law student, you don't exactly have a ton of that. And I really realized while I was there that I missed Houston. I missed living in Houston. And there's also this sense that when you're in New York, there's so many people there who are kind of writing and
Hmm.
self-reflective. It's a lot of navel gazing up there, for better or worse. And Houston is really a city of action. People just do things here. They work here. There's not a lot of sort of looking around and contemplating about it. We just do it.
Right.
There's something that I really like in that. But at the same time, because it's my job to write about the city and write about things, and I'd been doing that since high school. I felt like Houston is a place where my work could go further and I could have a bigger impact.
You missed the traffic, I guess, too, right?
Well, I've
So,
always been an interlooper, so I don't hit the worst traffic. I'll say that.
so I also read where you won a Pulitzer, right? Or you're a finalist.
Yeah, right. I was a Pulitzer finalist in 2017 for
Hmm.
work I did with my colleague Joe Hawley about gun violence and gun culture.
Hmm.
And a lot of the pieces that I wrote were really focused on recognizing that a lot of problems of gun violence are things that really government and policy can't get at, particularly within the bounds of the Second Amendment. There's a lot of things the government just isn't allowed to do. And responsibility falls on the gun owning community and family to really try to set hard standards of safety, whether it's storing your guns well, whether it's recognizing when a neighbor or friend or family member is going
Hmm.
through a mental health crisis, and it falls on you to say, I'm going to hold on to your guns for a little bit until you're better, to make sure you don't accidentally hurt yourself or someone else.
Right. I know you write quite a bit about housing too and bike lanes,
Hmm.
right?
That's right. I mean, I like to think of it in terms of just quality of life issues in Houston.
Hmm.
On housing, it's recognizing that really one of our civic strengths as the city has been that we make it really easy to build a lot of housing. And, a lot of it is that we allow sprawl, we don't have zoning, we have pretty like loose regulations around a lot of things where other cities had strict regulations. And for decades, other places would look at Houston and say, ugh, there's so much sprawl, it's so ugly. How can you stand this? It's so awful. Thank God, our city isn't like that. But over time, a lot of these cities really started to run into the problems that they hadn't built enough housing. And now they start to look at Houston and say, Houston, you were able to grow while
Mm-hmm.
keeping housing affordable because you let that supply meet demand. You just kept building more housing. But right now, part of my concern is that we've picked a lot of that low-hanging fruit when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to making housing easily accessible. We're kind of pushing the limits of sprawl in many ways. And so we have to look again and see, okay, what is it that we have on our books, in our municipal processes, and sort of other regulations that are standing in the way of adding more housing where there's demand for it. And a lot of it is things like parking minimums. If you build a home, you are required by the government to build a certain amount of parking spots, but that doesn't always make a lot of sense. It's kind of an arbitrary top-down amount. We have these setback requirements that you can't build right up next to the street. And if you go into kind of dense urban cities, like they very much let you build right up to that sidewalk. You walk out your door and there you are in the city. And so I think that Houston needs to really take a look at ourselves and say, how can we let these parts of town where there is
Mm-hmm.
clearly demand for to let people live there, and you can just look at the cost of housing, the cost per square foot, and say there's a lot of demand, and say, how do we let the supply fill in? How can we cut some of this red tape and let it happen? And there's this really compelling, like bipartisan coalition across the political spectrum from left to right of folks like all in agreement on this. So up in Austin in the state legislature, there's been
Mm-hmm.
a lot of good movement on, state laws to cut some of that red tape. At a local level, it's a little bit tougher just because I think Houston doesn't have the muscle memory to know how
Mm-hmm.
to do this stuff. We've never really had to do it. We've always kind of
Right.
accidentally been very good at it. And if you look at Dallas or Austin or places like New York City, San Francisco, LA, like there are these real strong political movements to try to make it happen. But because Houston's never really felt that pressure, it's not there yet. The grassroots aren't there yet.
So, Evan, to be a writer, let's
Hmm.
say with the internet and all that, I'm sure you're quite a bit younger than I am. With the way papers are going, what are some of your challenges you think in the job that you do?
Well, I think there's kind of two challenges for,
Mm-hmm.
writing for a daily newspaper. One of them is that the business model has changed. It used to be
Right.
that if everything was print, you would make your money by selling ads in the newspaper. And yes,
Right.
people would pay for their subscription, but what really you almost wanted to make it as cheap as possible so that you have as many readers as possible so that you could
Right.
tell the advertisers, hey, if you take out ads in our paper, you're going to get, 1 million eyeballs on it. And that's how you made your money.
Mm-hmm.
But now advertising has moved out of print in a serious way. People, advertisers, not just want to kind of get a big net to capture people, because through the internet and through social media, you can do very targeted advertising specifically to the folks you want to hit.
Mm-hmm.
So we've kind of lost a lot of that. So that part of the business model is tough, and online advertising just doesn't bring in the same amount of revenue. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of it is owned by Google, Facebook, other
Right.
social media platforms. So you're losing some of those revenue streams.
Wow.
Uh, at the same time, uh, folks are moving from reading print to reading online. And there has been a really great growth in online subscribers and online readership.
Mm-hmm.
So, when folks say, oh, nobody reads newspapers anymore, they might not be reading print, but they're definitely reading what we write in huge numbers. The
Yeah.
challenge is, getting people to pay for it like how they used to. And
Yeah.
so if you are, looking on the internet to find something to read, if you want to get good news, I think the business case for paid news is pretty straightforward.
Hmm.
You give the newspaper money and they give money to reporters, and then the reporters like find the news and deliver it to you. It's like, okay, that's great. But, I oversee the opinion section. So what is the business case for paying for opinion? Because you can go on Twitter and Facebook or, blogs, podcasts, and you'll hear people express their opinions for free. So, how can you convince someone to pay for opinion content? And over the past couple of years, we've seen real great successes of Substacks, of where people have
Right.
these sort of paid, soft news or opinion content that folks are willing to pay for. And I think that and can show folks that there is real financial value to the opinion you deliver if you are one sort of filling gaps, like where can I go to get smart, thoughtful opinion about Houston? There isn't a
Yeah.
whole lot of it. And so
Believe it or not, Evan, my parents have been getting the paper for over 50 years, I think, the Chronicle.
that's wonderful. I love that. Tell them thank you.
Yeah,
um,
my dad's like in his 80s and he wouldn't even go close to a tablet. Yeah, so,
yeah.
um, so let me ask you this. You have a law degree, but how did you decide you wanted to go into writing? You don't want to practice law or?
Well, I really wanted to write, and it kind
Mm-hmm,
of started when I was in high school.
mm-hmm,
I get very worked up about things, get very passionate about things.
yeah,
Um, but I'm not a big guy.
mm-hmm,
And so I'd kind of get in people's faces about stuff, and they get in my face, and I would not win those confrontations.
right,
But then I started to sort of write my arguments in the student newspaper, uh, and I would win. I would win the arguments on paper. And sometimes I would write about things. This was, around 2003 or so.
mm-hmm,
So I was writing stuff saying, like, this is why America is wrong to invade Iraq. I would write stuff about, like, this is why Texas is wrong to ban same-sex marriage.
mm-hmm,
And even not just students, but parents would get very worked up about what I was writing in the student newspaper. And I found that I was better at writing than them, too.
mm-hmm,
And I could win those arguments there. And I really enjoyed doing that. And so I kept doing it through college. I went to Rice. I interned at Texas Monthly Magazine. And while I was there, Evan Smith, who's the editor in chief at the time, and he went
right,
on to lead the Texas Tribune. He sort of gathered all the interns around, I guess it was around 2006, and said, listen, I'm going to give you the best advice you're ever going to get in journalism. Don't get a journalism degree. Don't get a master's in journalism. Try to get a degree in something else. Try to set yourself up for a job in some other field because journalism is in trouble. And
mm-hmm,
you want to have another job you can fall back on, one.
right,
And two, if you have an expertise in some other field, it makes you a better journalist. And so I thought to myself, well, I guess I'll go to school. I didn't really know what else I wanted to do. I thought I could do sort of First Amendment law or that I would do some policy work. And I quickly learned that like going to law school to learn about policy is a little bit like saying, oh, I'm really interested in like ancient Roman aqueducts, so I'm going to go to plumbing
right,
school. Like, no, it's a vocational experience.
right,
Unless you're going to say like Yale, this is vocational.
right,
And so pretty quickly, kind of, but there's a lot of stuff I found interesting in criminal law. And so I graduated, I passed the bar. I was in the prosecutor's office, the Harris County DA's office for a little bit.
mm-hmm,
And I was kind of shocked, particularly in these misdemeanor lower level cases, just how many folks kind of showed up, were charged with crimes because
mm-hmm,
like they messed up in life. They'd done stuff that I think, Houstonians do every day. They yelled at
right,
someone, they got in a little fight, they got caught with a little bit of drugs. And it's like, I don't think they were really a threat to anyone, but usually what it was is like they were just very dumb or
mm-hmm.
they were doing this so many times that they finally got caught on it.
But
But
Evan,
I was kind of,
let me ask you this: that
yeah.
you know what's missing now is like I'm 60 years old,
Hmm.
and the thing of it is, it's like whether you like somebody or don't like somebody, that dialogue is missing. You know what I'm
Hmm.
talking about?
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, if I like, let's just say, for example, the mayor, or don't like the mayor, president, whatever, whatever you like. If I like coffee or tea, that dialogue is not there anymore. People just try to avoid it. How do you deal with that?
I think that you're right, that particularly because of the internet, it's a lot easier for people to self-sort than it used to
Hmm.
be. It's a cafeteria world, and you can go out and pick the specific things you want. And it used to be that if you got your news through like your print newspaper, you would get a whole bunch of stuff that you didn't really sign up for.
Right.
Anyways, okay, I'm getting the Chronicle so I can read, Astros coverage, and I'm also going to get some politics in there. But now it's very easy to like just find those, sports sources on
Right.
the internet, and
Right.
you don't have to get exposed to anything else. And so I kind of view it as my job to find the things that cut across all of Houston, which is that we all live here, we all live together,
Hmm.
and then try to elevate the voices from across that spectrum and force people to like see these are the folks you live with, whether you like it or not,
Hmm.
and you should know what they believe. And you should know like what their reasons are for believing those things, and you kind of have to take it earnestly. And so
Right.
sometimes folks get into politics, and it's very, they argue from like a place of negative partisanship. They won't say, I like this. They'll say, I want to stop that person because I don't like them.
Right.
And I'm not a big fan of that. Like, I want to know what it is that people actually want to happen. What are the outcomes they're hoping for and why? And I want to be able to like elevate those perspectives. And I get pushback sometimes from folks who say, why did you run this person? They're so far to the right. Why do you run this person? They're so far to the left. And I'd
Right.
say, like, well, I know that they're not a majority view, but they are a view here in Houston, and they've got folks behind them too. And my kind of sincere hope is that, if you read the Houston Chronicle, you will see uh, yourself reflected on those opinion pages like one time out of 10. Because you're going to see a whole bunch of other views too. But
Right.
a part of that is you're going to see yourself.
Because I listen to you and I go, I need to get a voice like that, Evan. I mean, I've been doing some podcasting. My background is in accounting, and it's like, I don't know. I guess it takes a lot of practice. I'm not sure, but
I definitely have a face for radio.
right, right. Let me ask you something. One last question. What do you think about, like, let's say a younger person trying to do what you're doing? What do you
Hmm.
what do you tell them, especially in this day and time?
I would say just start writing
Hmm.
anywhere you can, any place you can. Try to find the writers who you like now
Hmm.
and figure out how they got to where they are. Try to emulate them in some ways.
Hmm.
But really, it's just put that pen to paper or put your butt in the chair and your fingers on the keyboard
Right,
and start writing. And try to build. Here's something that writers didn't used to really need, but you need kind of a brand for yourself. You
right.
need to show people that you like to write, you like to weigh in on certain topics,
Hmm.
and you have something worth listening to say. And you can do that over social media. You can do that over so many different platforms that didn't used to be available. So in some ways it's hard to be an aspiring writer as a young person just because the jobs aren't there like how they used to be. But on
Hmm.
the other hand, it is so much easier to just start writing and getting your writing in front of other people's eyeballs, where before there'd be so many more gatekeepers in the way.
Right, because like that commercial for Nike, just do it. That's what
Hmm.
Rahil kind of inspired me to say, hey, I've been wanting to do this for podcast for a while, and I thought Rahil said, he told me just do it. I said,
Yeah.
oh man, I get nervous, I don't know what to do, and all that. So,
My,
um,
my wife is a psychologist, and she likes to say, just do it scared. You can be scared, but just do it.
yeah. Evan, let me ask you something else. I'm
Hmm.
visually impaired, right? Maybe you
Hmm.
don't know, but there's a service called Newsline.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with that or not.
I'm not.
So basically, what it is, it puts the Chronicle and all these other papers in
Hmm.
audio format,
Oh, wow.
and we dial into a phone service, or it could be
Hmm.
on an app, and we listen to the paper. It's like a machine that reads it back to you.
Hmm.
It's actually pretty cool. But that paper, I mean, that servers doesn't have the op-ed section in it. They're kind of not very cool. So, but
Well,
it
you
does have
know,
different sections in it. So
if
you
you go
can,
to the Houston Chronicle website, we have I think sort of AI done recordings or audio versions of each article opinion section. Just go and click; it'll read it out to you.
wow, I did not know
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool. Yeah, because my parents actually are subscribers of the Chronicle. Do you get
Oh
that
yeah.
free also, or do you have to be a?
You have to be a subscriber to get on that part of the website. But if you subscribe and you can go on the website and you just, there's a little play button at the top of the article and you click it and it'll say listen now and it'll read it out to you.
Yeah. Well, Evan, this was very informative. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. Um, can you give the readers your email address?
Sure.
I
My
mean,
email
listeners, I
address,
mean.
yeah, is it's evan.mintz@houstonchronicle.com. And I love reading whatever it is that people have to say. We love the feedback. That's why we're here.
Yeah, because I had trouble spelling your last name. It's Mintz.
Mintz, yes.
Yeah, and if you guys want to reach me, my email is grabbingcoffeewitharun, ARUN at gmail.com. Uh, thank you very much, Evan. I'll call you in sometime.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your time.